Hi everyone. I'm obviously in a different room even though it's the same day. I'm just trying to figure out the lighting. Got a bit muggy out downstairs. Now, in this lecture, lecture 2, we're going to look at a bit of grammar. Okay, not a lot, but we're also going to look at some style. Now, by that I mean that there are certain things that you should avoid that you might have been taught in high school, but we want to be wary of at the university level. Okay, so we're going to do those two things. And then I'll talk a tiny bit about the reading that I sent to you. Not a lot. I just want to show you a couple of things in terms of how different writers do different things, okay? So let's get your notes in front of you, because the first 5-6 lines, once you understand what I'm talking about there, the comma rules will fall into place, except for one. Okay, there is one that's tricky. Some of you are going to get very confused in the first 15 minutes of this lecture, but then I'm going to show you how to avoid that confusion. You'll see what I mean, okay? So let's start with one word, okay? What is a clause? Now, for some reason, a lot of students don't quite get this. A clause is not necessarily a sentence, not a full sentence. A clause is simply a group of words. So make a note of that. Put a star beside that, okay? Because that does seem to confuse people. So a clause is simply a group of words. So notice the example I've got there, okay? A great player. Well, that's obviously not a sentence, but it is a clause. In other words, it's a group of words. And so because it's not a full sentence, we would call that a dependent clause. So think about it for a second. I don't want to get too much in terms of technical on you. If your parents see you as a dependent, it means that you still rely on them, right? So words like, or a phrase, clause, like a great player, if we were going to do it properly, would rely on something else. So that's why we call it a dependent clause. Now, on the other hand, an independent clause, think about it, if you're independent, well then you stand on your own. An independent clause simply means a full proper sentence. That's all, okay? So sometimes we have full proper sentences, but then sometimes we have dependent clauses that are dependent on those other sentences, the full sentences. So as we go through this lecture, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a quick one right now, okay? Wayne Gretzky went down in history, okay, because of all his skill, right? So that could be a full sentence on its own, period. But if we added a great player, well, then it wouldn't work. So that's where we actually use the dreaded semicolon, okay? I want you guys to try and avoid the semicolon as much as possible. As a matter of fact, I'm going to end off the lecture with that, okay? Almost at the end. So think about that for a moment. A clause then is simply a group of words. An independent clause is a group of words that stand on their own, okay? Or stand on its own, to be grammatically correct. All right? Now, as long as you get that distinction, the comma rules will make sense except for one. Okay, are we ready to go? There are 5 rules, okay? 5 rules that you need to know how to use a comma properly. By the time we're done, I'll suggest you only need 4. 3 of them are very straightforward. You know them. You already know them. But and actually 4 if you follow what I'm suggesting. But one of them is tricky, really tricky. So look at your notes. Let's start with the obvious one, okay? Anytime you have the word but in the middle of a sentence, it should be preceded by a comma. Now what I want to show you here, like we call that a conjunction, but I don't care about that, okay? I simply want you to improve your writing. So think about it for a moment. Why do we have commas? Why do we have like certain pieces of punctuation? They're not there for the writer. They're there for the reader. And as you'll see as we go through today, okay, or at least in the next half hour or so, we also have certain words that are there for the reader, not the writer. And so the comma indicates to the reader that we're having now a shift in thought. In other words, if I were to put the word, if instead of that phrasing I had the word and there, okay, I don't need any punctuation, obviously, because I have continuous thought, right? But the minute I have, as a matter of fact, watch my hands. I'm talking, I'm talking, I'm talking, but, in other words, I'm doing a shift now. So you're indicating to the reader that that shift is there. That's why we do that. And so anytime you find that you have the word but in the middle of a sentence, okay, 99.99% of the time, you will need a comma in front of it. There is one exception, as you can see in your notes, when but is used in the place of except. So everybody but John went to the store. Well, in that example, you wouldn't need any punctuation, but that's the only time. Something else to think about, it's not very good style to start a sentence with the word but. Okay? You should try and avoid that as well. All right? So I think that one's pretty straightforward. Don't make that mistake. All right? Number 2, you know from high school. When writing out a series. Okay? So I like apples, comma, oranges, comma, peaches, and cream. But I've chosen these words very carefully because I want to show you something. All right? I'm sure some of you see it already. Let's just say I worked in a factory. No, let's say I worked in a grocery store, sorry. And it was my job to order in all the produce and the goods. And I wanted, okay, 1,000 cases of each of these things. I just want to show you what a good writer thinks about. If you look carefully, if we were doing this in class right now, some of you would be saying, well, we're going to get 4,000 cases. But some of you would be suggesting, no, we're only going to get 3,000 cases. So there are times where you want to think about your punctuation. You want to think about, are you being clear? For those of you who don't understand, peaches and cream can be seen as one unit, okay? It's corn. So in other words, let's just say I know that I want all these separate. There's a couple of things we could do here. Some of you know this already. You're yelling at the screen just to say it, all right? I could have written, okay, I want apples, comma, oranges, comma, peaches, comma, yeah, we can do that, and cream. By putting that comma after peaches, that's what we call the Oxford comma. And I know some of you know that already, all right? But I just want to be, I'm pretending that we're all on the same page here. And so it would be even better if you want to make sure that you had 4,000 cases. Well, why not move peaches to somewhere else in that list? Okay, so, okay. And some of you may have learned that, by the way, writing out a list. Usually, though, the word list is associated more with technical writing. Now, I don't think we're going to need to worry too much about that for this course. In other words, I don't see us, listing out a whole lot of stuff or like writing out a series of adjectives or what have you. But it's not bad to know. Okay, sorry guys, I have a tiny bit of a cold today, so forgive me. But it's not bad to know. For a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you will be stuff that you can use outside of university. All right. In other words, I'm going to try and help you with your writing skills in general. This is going to be. I'm going to go off screen for a second. Oh my God, was that unprofessional or what? Anyway, so we have those two so far, which I think most of you would know. And then you also have, when you're writing out a series, when you're starting a sentence with words like because or although. Now that may surprise you. You were probably told, okay, that you should never begin a sentence with the word because. Well, in fact, you can. And I'm going to show you where words like that work perfectly in essays. The construction would be although X, where going back to the beginning of the lecture today, X is a clause, it's a group of words. You would have to write it although X, comma, Y, period. And Y would be a group of words as well. Okay, a clause. Same thing with because. Now, it is true that when you use words like that at the beginning of sentences, they create what we call the passive voice, right? But let me just give you an example of how a word like although would work perfectly in an essay, all right? Although religion played an important part in a given war, okay, I'm going to be generic here. So although religion played an important part in a given war, comma, economics played an even larger one. So can you see what I did there? In other words, there's a transition. I was just talking about religion in my essay. Now I'm hinting to the reader where we're going next. Follow me on that? So now we're going to start talking about economics. And I find that for transitional sentences, it's usually best to have them at the end of a paragraph, not at the beginning. And we'll talk more about that later as well. Okay, so far? So those three are pretty straightforward. And I think even the fourth one is pretty straightforward as well. Okay? So note what I mean by this. Introductory words or phrases. Furthermore, therefore, however. Remember, in the first lecture I suggested however. Now we're going to see why that is so problematic. On the one hand, on the other hand, there's over 1,000 words and phrases like that in the English language. And we use them. All of us use them, right? Okay. Once again, why do we use them? I'm going to ask you a question, and let's hope we can follow what I'm doing here. Are those words necessary for the construction of the sentence? The answer is no. Why do we have them in there? To guide the reader along. So if I'm saying furthermore, what am I doing? I'm adding on to the thought. But if I say however, okay, now what am I telling the reader? Well, again, we're going somewhere else. Usually, words like that will be found at the beginning of sentences, followed by a comma. And what should come after that comma, okay, and I can hear some of you, should be an independent clause, a proper sentence. That's pretty straightforward, right? I think we can all understand that one. Now let's look at number 5, then we're going to come back to number 4. Now look at number 5, okay, 2E. X in the uppercase or capital X indicating the beginning of the sentence, comma. Now we have those very same words and phrases that we had in 2D or number 4, okay, comma, and Y, period. X is a clause, Y is a clause. Now watch what I do, and then as I said, if you get confused, I'm going to fix it, all right? If I do this correctly, I should be able to take everything, including the commas, okay, inside the commas out. Just mentally, I should be able to take that out. I should be able to take X, okay, that clause, and Y, that clause. They will be two independent clauses, by the way, right? If you go back to what we began with today. I should be able to take the first clause and the second clause, and I should be able to join them together. And I should have a nice, smooth sentence. Okay, that's the key. Do I have a nice, smooth sentence? It's possible to do it, as long as you know what you're doing. So, take a look at the examples that I have here. Normally I would do this on the board in class. One of these is correct and one is incorrect, and let's figure out why. John loves chocolate ice cream, comma, however, comma, Jill does not like ice cream on hot days, period. What's wrong with that? Well, our rule, go back to number 2E, our rule says I should be able to take the word or phrase out, join X and Y, and I should have a nice smooth sentence. Let's do it. John loves chocolate ice cream. Jill does not like ice cream on hot days. That's two sentences, two independent clauses. So we can't join them with commas. If we do, we have something known as a comma splice. And I'll talk more about that as well later on. But for now, okay, I'm going to show you how you can do it. Then I'm going to fix the confusion. Notice the correct one. Sally, however, thought there were major problems with the proposal. Okay. Take the however out there and the commas. Sally thought there were major problems with the proposal. It's fine. So if you know what you're doing, by all means, feel free to put, those certain words or phrases within your sentences. It basically gives your sentence a bit more sophistication. But if you don't know what I'm talking about now, forget about number 5 or 2E. Just don't do it. Instead, always have your introductory words at the beginning of your sentences. It's as simple as that. Always make sure those are at the beginning of the sentence, and then you have a comma. If you do that, chances are you won't make mistakes. Okay? But if you try and do it the other way around and you're not too sure, I can almost guarantee you'll have comma splices, and that's going to deter, I should say, from your grade. So the whole point of this lecture today will be to minimize things, not to give you a whole lot of rules. In other words, you don't even need rule number 5, 2E. You don't need it. All you really need are the first 4. And so, as I said, if you feel like you want to email me right now, don't. Instead, get those introductory words or phrases at the beginning of your sentences, follow them with a comma, and then write the rest of your sentence. Okay? So, as I said, that can be confusing. It can be confusing. I wouldn't have understood that in my first year. I would have appreciated just being told, okay, just put those words there for now. As your writing gets better, right, you'll be able to play around with these things. But you don't want to make mistakes early on. Okay, so I hope that helps. I hope that explains it, all right? And go back, again, you can always pause the lecture, rewind, go back, and see what I'm doing there if you didn't quite get it, all right? In other words, it can be done, but you have to know how to do it. And so that takes us then to the next part, and this one, boy, these are style records, what I'm about to show you here. I simply want you to understand, okay, the difference, well, actually, I want you to get rid of something. I don't even want you to understand it. Notice in the second line, I have don't write the way you speak. Okay, so the word don't is called a contraction. You all know that, right? So a contraction is where you take 2 words and you squeeze them together with an apostrophe. Maybe you leave a letter out. When you do that, you create far too many possibilities in your writing. And so let's go down to number 4. We're still on page 2. Look at all those possibilities for what we call the possessive case. A lot of people don't even realize ITS is a word. Many people don't even realize that. So what I would not suggest, really, you should listen to me on this because your writing will improve. Get rid of IT apostrophe S. Get rid of YU apostrophe RE. Get rid of WHO apostrophe S, and especially get rid of THEY apostrophe RE. Just get rid of those. Then you will only have really one thing to be concerned about. In other words, it's, okay, something belonging to it. Your, something belonging to you. Whose, okay, something belonging to whomever. The only one you have to worry about now is THEIR or THERE. Almost every time it's going to be THERE, right? THEIR simply means belonging to them. So again, pause right now, write that down. So let's do it again. It's, ITS, belonging to it. Your, belonging to you. Whose, belonging to whom. Their, THEIR, belonging to them. These are the common ones when it comes to the possessive case where we don't use an apostrophe. Okay? So really, get rid of all those contractions and you will lose marks. You will lose marks because by using the contractions, okay, you will end up making mistakes. So just get rid of them in your writing. And I know it's not easy because, like I said, that's the way we speak, that's the way we text, right? But you really want to avoid those things. Your, I find, is a huge one nowadays with mistakes, texting, and all that. So get rid of those in your writing. All right. As I said, take a look at top of page 3. You've got too many possibilities. Minimize the possibilities. You minimize the mistakes. Okay, simple as that. Now, when it comes to the apostrophe, when do we use that? Well, I'm going to show you, one of the more intimidating words. It's a word when we're trying to show something belonging to someone and the name or the word ends in S. People get really confused with that, okay? So I'm going to do that now with you, all right? Let's look first of all at the apostrophe and what it does. I'll come back to Jones later, right? The apostrophe shows the possessive case. The possessive case simply means belonging to. Okay? Belonging to me, belonging to you, belonging to it, whatever. And so, let's just say, or I should say, in English, okay, not all languages do this. In English, if I wanted to show the possessive case of Ricky, the name Ricky, I would write Ricky apostrophe S. Okay? Ricky's house. The house that belongs to Ricky. Okay? In other languages, French, for instance, right? It would be done very differently. Okay? Now, the problem, going back to Jones, is when we have a word that ends in S, okay, and we get confused, right? So get that out of your head right now. I'm going to show you how to fix that. Let's say you have a word ending in S and you want to show possession. Okay, this is what you do. And again, it's in your notes. Draw a mental box around the word and don't change the word. Draw a whole mental box around the word and don't change the word. The apostrophe goes outside the mental box. So, let's go back just for a second. Take a look at Jones. Let's just say I had put that apostrophe, okay, after the E. What have I just done? I've changed his name. I've changed his name to Joan. So instead, I draw a mental box around the word Jones, the whole word. The apostrophe goes outside the box. I know you've got a question right now, so maybe I'll answer it right now. Can you put another S at the, after the apostrophe? Believe it or not, you can, but it's not very strong usage. Okay? I was surprised when I started learning grammar that you can, but you really shouldn't. I sounded like Kevin from The Office there. You can, but you shouldn't. Anyway, and so, as I said, don't ever get confused with that anymore. Draw a mental box around the word, but don't change the word. And then the apostrophe goes outside. If the word doesn't end in S, you add the S. If the word ends in S, just leave it with the apostrophe. Okay? So I've got some examples here that I usually do on the board, right, with kittens and all of that. I like to play a little game, right? And I asked the students, okay, I'm going to write this word on the board, and you show me where the apostrophe goes. And I don't know if you caught what I was doing with that, or what I'm doing right now. There is no possible answer just yet. Why? I didn't tell them whether it was kitten or kittens. But the good news about that is you're the writer. And so you don't have to worry about that, right? In other words, you'll know whether it's kitten or kittens. And if it's kitten, well, then it's apostrophe S. If it's kittens, well, then draw a word around the entire box, a box around the entire word. Apostrophe goes outside the box. Okay? And that's how we figure that one out. Okay? And that can be confusing. So like I said, you might want to go back and just take a look at that again. All right? But as I said, just don't change the word. Okay? Just don't change the word. You should be fine. And so a couple of other things here. And then I might take a pause just for a second because I want to show you something. I want to be careful. Yeah, I want to be careful about that. All right? This lecture, by the way, I should mention why the lectures will be much shorter than they would be in class. In class, I have a lot of interaction. And like I said, I like to do things on the board. So the lectures will be shorter, but I don't think you'll mind that for a summer course, right? If you know what I mean. And so let's take a look, just a couple last things here, all right? Take a look, yeah, in English usage, as I said, right? If you take a look at, I have many dogs, okay? You're indicating that there's more than one dog, okay? That is the dog's house over there, okay? And so the S would go outside. Okay, so like I said, we eliminate the second S, but that's only accepted or standard usage. Okay. Now, one last one that I wanted to show you, and then I'm gonna pause for a moment. Like I said, we're about 26 minutes in. This one I only came across recently. I've seen it many times before. Let's just say there's you have two possessive subjects. Okay, two individuals with the possessive. You might have seen this. Let's just say we have, there's a car that is shared by Tom and Mary, all right? We would actually write Tom and Mary's car is in the shop for repair. But let's just say both their cars were in the shop for repair. Then you would actually write Tom's and Mary's car. And that's a new one. Not new, but that's one that kind of surprised me. I'd seen the form before, but didn't really understand the rule, right? Until I started teaching grammar, right? And so I thought that was an interesting one to show as well. Okay, so as I said, like all of that stuff and everything else we're going to do in just a second will be on, can be on the quiz. It'll be, fair game. And don't email me about the quiz right now. I talked a bit about that in the last lecture. We'll have time to discuss that once I send out these videos. Like you already kind of know what we're doing, right? It'll be on the possessive case. I should actually go through it right now, so no email. It'll be on the possessive case, on commas, right? Things, those two things for sure. All right, they're the major ones. Now, as I said, I think I'm going to just pause for a second. There's one thing I want to make sure is correct here, right? And you can stretch or whatever. We're almost half hour into it. We should be another half hour, maybe not even, because remember, I'm going to talk about cooperative dissent as well. Don't worry if you haven't read it just yet, okay? You can always go back. I'm just going to show you a couple of things. So like I said, I'm going to pause just for about 2 minutes, all right? I'll be right back. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to pause especially was because now we're going to get into some style points. This is where you can lose a lot of marks if you don't follow, okay? So take a look at number 6 where it says very important. I don't know if you guys have ever been taught gerunds, and it doesn't matter if you have, all right? I'm going to speak about them throughout the course. They are some of the biggest style wreckers in writing. These are words that end in ing at the beginning of a sentence, but they're not the subject of the sentence. So I'm going to say that again, all right? So you've got a word that ends in ing. The two most common, write this down, okay? Write this down because it's not in your notes. The two most common, having. That is a horrible word to begin a sentence, having, okay? H-A-V-I-N-G, having. And another one is giving. Those are the two biggies. The minute you start a sentence with a word like that, you're going to somehow back into your subject matter. It's going to take you a while to get to your subject matter. And later on, I'm going to show you how that can create so many problems with subject-verb agreement and with punctuation. Okay? There's a couple of other phrases as well that we'll get into. I'm not going to overload you today. A couple of other phrases like that as well. All right? So, but for now, watch out for words like having, giving, all right? Ing words known as gerunds. Now, don't get me wrong. Can I begin a sentence with an ing word? Sure. Let's say I wrote, swimming is an enjoyable activity. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And that's because swimming is the subject of the sentence, right? It's doing the action. Whereas when you have phrases like having, I'll give you a perfect example right now. But don't worry, I'm going to come back to this, and this one won't be on the quiz, all right? This would be something more on the second quiz, a bit more sophisticated. Having trouble falling asleep, the TV helps me through the night. Okay? Now, for those of you who really know your grammar, that was absolutely horrible, what I just said. Again, don't email me about this. We'll get into this more. But believe it or not, if I write a sentence like that, it's the TV that's having trouble sleeping. And that makes no sense whatsoever. So again, rather than me giving you all these rules, why not just think to yourself, okay, I'm never going to write having or giving at the beginning of a sentence again. In other words, get the action of your sentence at the beginning. Your subject's at the beginning. I think at the end today, I'll talk a tiny bit about subjects and verbs, but that's something for down the road, right? In other words, remember how I said in the first lecture, we're worried about structure for your first essay, okay? Obviously, your writing will be a part of the grade, but later on, we're going to really sharpen subject-verb agreement and things like that. That'll be, I think it's around lecture 9 or 10, but we'll get to it, all right? For now, as I said, watch out for those words. Now, another style thing, and this is something you wouldn't even think about, watch out when you're using phrases like that is, it is, this is, because if you write longer paragraphs, which you shouldn't, and we'll talk about that too later on. I keep saying later on, I know, but we'll get into a whole lot of stuff. It can become confusing as to what that or it is referring to. right? So if you feel the need to do that, then you should always specify, or at least, as much as you can, specify what that is, okay? That report is problematic, rather than simply saying that is problematic simply because you were talking about the report, 6, 7 sentences ago. It can become very confusing, especially if you have more than one subject in a paragraph, right? What are these things referring to? And so be aware of that too. It's a little thing. You really should be taking notes on these, right? Watch out for this, star, whatever. Because I've already given you all the lecture material. It's not enough just to read this and listen to me. Each of you will be different. Each of you will have your own unique style of writing, certain things you need to work on. So when you know you do something, put a star beside it or highlight it. Say, okay, I got to be aware of that. I used to be a terrible writer. I would make, there are certain phrases that I would have in my sentences. They would cause very awkward expression, or they would cause passive voice. There's one in particular that I'll show you later on called the was by. Okay? The bill was approved by the board. So that's what I call the was by. Instead, why not just write, the board approved the bill? These are the kind of things that many writers do. And we don't even realize it, okay? Remember, the goal of the course is to show you how to write an essay, but it's also to improve your writing for when you're out of the university. Many of you have been shown the 5-paragraph model, and that's something else we're going to have to break. Because even though it may work on the essays that we're going to be doing, it won't work in 3rd and 4th year. I can guarantee you that, or 2nd. So I'll be trying to show you things like that as well, okay? We will rarely use the word paragraph. You'll see what I mean. So let's go back now. We have a few other things, okay? And again, it should be maybe another 20, 25 minutes. Split infinitives. Okay, we're on page 5 now. I'm not too worried about split infinitives. There are 2 camps to that, and I don't need to get into it, right? It would be where you have a verb phrase like to do, or, well, I've got an example there for you, all right? So it's where you would write something like, he always tries to carefully do the work. Now, some grammarians would go crazy at that, because what they would say is, no, you should always write, he always tries carefully to do the work. You don't break up the to do or to be, right? Phrases like that. There are 2 camps to this, all right? One has to do with the Latin, okay? And they I'm not even going to get into it. All I'll say is I'm not too worried about those. Okay, so if you happen to do that, don't worry about it. All right? Okay? Yeah. If you really know your grammar, there's these 2 camps called prescriptivists, and they're the ones who are the hardliners, and then there are descriptivists who kind of understand that language changes, and I'm kind of in that camp. All right? So anyway, a couple of other things. Yeah. Punctuation. You're not going to listen to me on this, okay? But I'm telling you, I wish you would. You really should eliminate certain things from your writing. And one is the semicolon. Oh my God. Most of you were taught the semicolon, okay? Not properly, but you were taught it. And you were taught when you're not sure, okay, use a semicolon. That's not the best rule, if you know what I mean. And so a semicolon has a certain purpose. So let me give you a quick example of maybe something you would have done, like maybe someone showed you in high school, okay? I'm sorry to keep saying in high school, I just mean, now that you're back at school. Terry plays hockey, semicolon. Terry plays football, semicolon. Terry plays hockey, semicolon, okay? And on and on and on. Well, why not instead just write Terry plays hockey, comma, football, okay? And then you could put a comma, right? And baseball, period. In other words, it's better to write properly, okay, than to slip in things just for convenience. And that's really what the semicolon does for the most part. As I said, there is a specific usage for a semicolon, okay, but I'm not going to teach it to you because I would rather you didn't use it. So if you do and you use it incorrectly, well, once again, you're going to lose marks. Remember what I said earlier? We want to minimize, okay? Like just get rid of them. Get rid of them. Commas will usually do in the place of semicolons. Not always. And I've already given you a hint at where one semicolon, like where we would use a semicolon. Okay, but I don't really want you doing that. Remember, okay, I'll give you the example I gave you earlier when I was talking about Wayne Gretzky. Well, in fact, in that case, yeah, you would connect the dependent clause with the independent clause with a semicolon. But why would you do that? There are ways of getting around that just to have nice, smooth sentences. And if you didn't see my hand there, it went like that, smooth. All right. So try and avoid those things. Now, the other two are kind of, I don't really know how to explain them unless I had the board in front of me. There will be certain writers who will write, and they've got an idea, and the idea is very clear. Then they get another kind of, a sub-idea to the main idea. So they actually put a dash, and they put in the sub-idea. Then they put another dash, and then they go on with the writing. Don't do that. That just creates for really weak writing, all right? And it's the same, it would be the same thing with parentheses. Now, obviously, we will be using parentheses when it comes to documentation, but what I'm getting at is actually using parentheses right in the middle of your sentences, okay? Don't do that, all right? And so that's more or less where, what the lecture is saying there. Now, another one that I think is really important for us to understand, okay? You've got a word, and you put it in quotation marks. So studies have shown there's a reason why we do that. When we put a certain word in quotation marks, and don't write me about the other and all of that. I'm simply talking about general words. When we put it in quotation marks, that's our subconscious level telling us this is important. So anytime you feel the need to put a word in quotation marks on its own, like without it being a quote or anything like that, ask yourself, should I elaborate on that? Should I define that? And we'll talk about definition as well, okay, later on. But watch out for that, okay? Because if you put a word in, like what we think is, when we put a word in quotation marks, it basically explains itself. It explains your deeper meaning. Well, obviously it doesn't, okay? So watch out for that as well. And I've got a perfect example here, all right? Yeah. So find the correct words. So my wife and I, about 2 years, okay, at Christmas time, we're cleaning out some shelves. She's a concert pianist, all right? She was very accomplished, but it's a lot of energy, a lot of work. And so she more or less gave it up, okay? She became a teacher. But for the longest time, she gave like very, well, even with exclusive concerts. And Royal Conservatory and everything else. So we were cleaning, okay, and I came across this note, a thank you note for one of her concerts. But I want you to look at it. I hope you get a good laugh out of this, okay? Thank you for the splendid concert, and wish you the best in the coming years. So there's two things we could do with that. First of all, she is suggesting, okay, this friend, that the concert was shit. Is she not? Concert. And the best could be a death wish, couldn't it? Or a death threat? Anyway, that's the way I read it, and I just laughed and laughed, and I thought, I'm going to include that in every writing course I ever do. All right? So, anyway. Okay, I'll wait till you stop laughing, and then I'll go on. I'm kidding. Anyway, okay, so a couple of last things then. Yeah, 40 minutes is about right for, like I said, I'm condensing the lectures. Don't ask questions in your papers. Just don't do it. I know in high school you did. Just don't do it. And let me explain to you why. 2 reasons why. You ask a question, and one of 2 things will happen. A, you will answer the question. So therefore, if you did it properly, there was no need to ask the question to begin with. Or B, and even worse, you don't answer the question. So therefore, the reader is sitting there thinking, that was a really good question. Okay, why didn't you answer it? And I know, you want to email me right now and say, but in high school, we were taught to end off our essay. Don't do that, all right? We're going to get into all of that. This whole idea of hooks, having a hook in your essay, and then ending off with a question, that's all gone, okay? Let me be very clear on that. That's all gone. Okay, if you want to get an A in this course, you're not doing that. You're not asking questions, there's no hook. Okay, I'll be showing you the proper way to do these things. There's a very good reason, by the way, before we go on, there's a very good reason why high school English is set up the way it is. Not everybody goes to university. I should be very clear on that. I came from a very rough area in Toronto, Parkdale area, and only I think 3 of us went to university. Okay, not everyone goes. Like if you come from the glebe, high school or whatever, you just think everybody goes to university. No, they don't. And so your teachers aren't necessarily preparing you for university, right? They're simply trying to help you with your skills. Okay, so that you can function in the world. That's very important. So try and get rid of a lot of the thinking that was given to you in high school when it comes to writing, right? Because it's going to be very different here. Like I said, if you want to get an A, all right? Not everyone wants to get an A, and that's fine too. And so watch out for questions, okay? And then last couple of things. I'm not joking. I'm on the last page now. TWO is a number. Try not to get that confused, okay? And I'm kind of kidding, but 2 and 2, the TOO, they do confuse people. And so if this makes any sense to you whatsoever, again, the majority of the time you'll be using TO. TOO means to add on. I would like to go to. I would like to be added on to the group, okay? So it doesn't just mean also. Again, that's what some of you have been taught. No, it just means added on. Okay, this room had the perfect number of individuals. Then all of a sudden, someone came in, and now there are too many. TOO. The room was added on. Okay, or the individuals in the room were added on. So watch out for that as well. Small thing. By the way, we think spell check, grammar check, these things will catch everything. There's a mistake that I made earlier. Okay, I purposely, it had to do with however, that grammar check didn't catch. It thought it was fine. So we have technology, right? I mean, technology is wonderful for many things, but don't rely on it 100% when it comes to your writing. Just don't, okay? Because spell check will not catch everything, neither will grammar check. So I'm going to end off with 2 things now, okay? I want you to remember, and this I think this will help some of you who still have problems with creating proper full sentences. Every sentence is created by or made up of a subject and a verb, okay? Now, the subject of the sentence will always be someone, and make a note of this, okay? The subject of the sentence will always be someone or something. Every proper sentence will have one of those 2 things, okay? And so when it comes to writing your essays, I'll show you how to edit, because it's hard for us to pick up on those kinds of things. If we wrote it, if it came out of our head that way, it's going to sound fine. So there are times, though, where you will be able to find some of your mistakes, okay, if you follow some of the editing things that I'm going to show you. It's always easier, by the way, to have someone else look at your papers than for you to edit your own. But we'll talk more about that. And so now what I'm going to do, and don't worry if you haven't read it, okay, but I do, like, you could pause right now, then go read it. But I think I'll just go on and finish the lecture. Like I said, take about 45 minutes, maybe 50. Let's take a look at Naomi Klein's Co-opting Dissent. Normally, we would be in group right now. Okay, we would have done the lecture. We would have had, joking around and discussion. Then we would go to the group. Well, let's pretend now that we're there. Naomi Klein, I should just give you a tiny bit of background because it leads to why she writes the way that she does. She is she's more or less on the left wing of the political spectrum. Okay, not more or less, she is. Okay, and she writes for magazines that her readership would be more, I don't want to say only affluent, but they would be middle upper class to upper class. And so, being on the left, she has to be aware of certain things as she writes. And I want you to think about that as well, not for this course, but for your writing when you leave the university. In other words, there isn't just one way to write. There will be for this course, but I thought I'd show you just the first example of, okay, does the thesis always come at the beginning of a writing piece? Not necessarily, not necessarily. Should it in an academic piece? Yes, yes. And we'll get to that, I think, in the next lecture, okay? So let's not worry about that for now. But she is writing against corporations. Her audience is going to be people who more or less support corporations. So she can't really come out and state her thesis at the very beginning. In other words, if she makes a very bold statement, I'll give you a perfect example in a second. If she makes a bold statement, chances are her readers aren't going to read it. Okay? So let me give you a quick example. Let's just say I'm going to fire you. I'm your boss. I'm writing a 2-page letter. Okay? And in the very first paragraph, I tell you that you're being fired. Are you going to read the rest of that letter? Not with an open mind. Okay? You probably won't even read it anyway. Instead now, I'm going to promote you. And I'm going to tell you in the first paragraph, I'm promoting you. Will you read the rest of that letter? Oh yeah, you will. Because it's going to be all wonderful about you, right? So there are times where we put certain things in certain places, right, for our writing in order to pull in the reader. So in Klein's case, what she does is she builds an argument, and then as we flip the page, we find her thesis, believe it or not, at the very end of the piece. But I can offer you this advice without reservation. Nothing will change until corporations realize that they don't have a communications problem, they have a reality problem. So in other words, she really can't come out and say that at the beginning, she loses her readership. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that an academic article? No. It's written as a journalistic piece for a magazine. So what I'm trying to show you here is there are times in writing, let's say you get a job as an editor, okay, or a speechwriter, where you won't necessarily make bold statements at the beginning, all right? But in the essays that we're going to be doing, we're going to try and show you how, in fact, you do want to do that, and then go ahead and make your case, and then conclude reminding the reader what we did. And so that's enough, I think, for today, okay? It was almost 50 minutes long, and again, that's a lot of information. Now, again, I don't want you sending me emails saying, well, what did you mean by this, or what did you mean by that? I've given you examples, okay? And so now go back and look at your notes, and if you made really good notes, it should make sense for the most part, all right? Now, obviously, if there is an email, an emergency email or whatever, of course, but try and figure out the material as I've expressed and presented it to you, okay? And so next time we get together, basically, I'm gonna start working on the lectures, for next week, like the following week. And so, believe it or not, with the next set of lectures that come to you, okay, after these ones that I did today, we will be a third of the way through the course. So, as I said, it's going to happen quickly. All right. So, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you soon. Okay. Thanks. Oh, one last thing. As I said, just to remind you, look on Brightspace for MLA first page, sample page, and APA. And also one other thing, I'm gonna send you a file called 15 Steps. It's just on structure. We're not going to go through it like line by line, but it's a handy thing to have when you're writing your first essay. Okay, and so I'll send those to you, before the weekend's over. Not send them to you; they'll be on Brightspace before the weekend's over. Otherwise, I'll send you the 2 videos in the next little while. Okay? Thanks very much.